everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Extra Shift. I'm Chris, here as always with Brendan. How are we going?
Pretty good. It's been a little while since we last chatted, a little longer than intended. Been sick and up and down and busy and all everything, but we're back.
We were ready to record last week.
Yeah.
And as I was typing up the notification to say we're about to go and record, I get a message from Brendan going, "I feel dead."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I never tested positive for COVID, but it definitely felt like it. So I'm not 100% sure exactly if it was just something else, but either way, not fun. But yeah, welcome to episode 202.
Yep, it is 202. Now, obviously, we've got our normal where we go through the list of players, but we've done that a couple of times. So what I've added to the equation this round of podcasts is trivia for Brendan. Relating to the number, and you have no idea how hard it is to find individual number trivia once you get into the 200s.
I'm just going to be a wild guessing a lot of these. I don't foresee me getting many of them.
I think you'll get this one because
Okay.
I'm going to sort of frame it so not that it's obvious.
Okay.
But okay, which player that is currently involved in the NHL has 202 career power play goals?
Well, the way that you said currently involved in the NHL makes me think that they're not actually actively playing.
I mean, I figured that would be pretty obvious that there's a very narrow window of people that could be if they were actively playing.
Yeah. Still, I don't know.
You can ask for one clue if you want one.
All right. Are they currently still working for a team?
Yes.
All right. I probably should have asked for what team it was, but
I'm not going to be that specific.
Yeah, as it came out of my mouth, it's got to be one of those old guys that like is in a front office now. What's that?
Do you want a clue?
I'm on the track of it being.
He's rounding it up.
It's got to be someone like. It's got to be someone like. I mean, I don't think Joe Thornton scored enough goals for it to be him, but it would be someone like in that kind of vein. Like, am I on the right track? That it's one of those guys that's like gotten a front office gig recently. Is it Henrik Sedin?
They haven't got a front office gig recently.
Oh, okay.
The clue I will give you is they played their entire career for one team.
Okay, that.
And I'll be really generous and say, and they might be with that team now.
Okay. Is it Alfie?
It is not. That is your guess. Okay. As former United States President Bill Clinton would say, Steve Zerman.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right.
Stevie Y, 200.
I had to just kind of go through a bunch of like front office guys, but like I didn't think of someone like retiring that long ago. Like it could have obviously been a bunch of different people, but I'm thinking it's starting to go through my head of like probably the it's not going to be like Henrik Sedin or someone because he's gotten a gig recently and also he's like probably mostly assists. And
it's really fascinating, by the way, looking at the list of power play goals as well. First of all, first place on the power play goals is a mile clear of anybody else who could possibly ever catch them, which is Ovi. Ovi's got 306.
Yeah.
He's a long way clear of the next active player. I'm actually struggling to find the next active player, but Evgeny Malkin is the next one with 176. So that's a bit of a. Oh no, Stamkos, sorry, 207. So Stevie Y is 202. Gretzky has 204 and Sakic has 205. So it's a nice little narrow gap there around those numbers. Also shows
it's fun because when someone starts passing them, they start passing them quickly.
Yeah, it's rapid. Suddenly, it's like when Thornton had that assist run, and he just like got to like a certain game, and then like in the next 6 games, just pass someone every game.
All the Famers like in a lot of those record things are like 5-10 from each other or whatever. So you have like
they all stopped around the same.
Yeah, they all stopped. Goes past like 6 guys. Like
so I now commence my hunt for the trivia fact for 203.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
Really hard.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, 202 took a bit, so we're going to get digging for that one. So anyway, let's get into the starting point of this, where we have a trade to announce. I think you're going to want to hear it. There's a lot of trades to sort of deal with. Nothing massive until literally an hour before we recorded this.
I think there's been a couple of sizable trades, like some of the stuff that probably people were expecting to wait till the deadline for.
Yeah, but we've had, like, I think that the dam might be about to burst.
Yeah.
After the one we'll get to, the last one we'll get to today, which is, obviously the most recent one, but I think that might clear a bunch of the pipeline by moving one player on. So we'll get to that. We'll start with Winnipeg, who acquired Sean Monahan from Montreal in exchange for a 2024 first and a 2027 conditional third. And the condition is if Winnipeg win the cup. A condition you're going to see on a lot of trades, by the way. I reckon that's going to be a massive condition.
It's pretty common, and usually, I think it's probably the easiest one to get another team to agree to, because they're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, like, as much as that's our plan, if we do happen to do it, then we won't be so mad about it.
Yeah, the Sharks have a lot of conditions on trades at the moment, relying on the New Jersey Devils remembering how to play hockey.
Yeah,
which doesn't look like it's coming, even though they did it to us yesterday. But I think this is it's an interesting move. I mean, obviously, as I said, I think Winnipeg, we've said a lot, need players who would like to be in that market. And I know they've been fairly decent this year. Like they played for the one stretch of the season, they were really good. They're still
considering how much they moved out in the last few years, like they've been doing significantly better than people kind of expected.
Yeah, and they're still actually doing really well. They're still up in the Central. They're on a 4-game winning streak, and they've got games in hand on everyone else in the Central. So, they're doing really well.
Yeah, I think the big question is going to be what Sean Monahan's kind of not just next contract, but also next few years of playing look like, because this year has kind of been a pretty big aberration in terms of like his bounce back. It's been a long time, like maybe 5-6 years or whatever, since he's put up, anything resembling the point pace that he's putting up at the moment. You could make an argument that it's potentially not sustainable, that, he, towards the end of his time in Calgary, obviously things kind of flamed out for him a little bit, and he you like that one? He wasn't the player he once was there. Obviously I know there's some injury issues and so forth. You could make the argument that he's back, he's recovered, he's back to the player that he was or whatever in Montreal. But I don't know. I'm curious to see, what he looks like going into his age 30 years and what contract he gets given next year, and whether that ends up being. For me, I think it's probably not a question of whether it ends up being like a bad contract, but how quickly it ends up being a bad contract.
I mean, it's an interesting situation with Monahan, because obviously he was on really good money originally. That first contract that he signed was 6.2, 6.3, and then this sort of most recent one was a prove it, and so it's much lower, obviously.
Yeah,
I think he probably ends up somewhere in mid twos, because I don't think he's not been bad by any stretch of the imagination, but he's also not been anywhere near the guy that got the $6 million contract. And
it's tough because he's on a pace to put up like 75 points or whatever, which would get him.
Yeah, but I like you, sort of, as you said before, I don't think that's sustainable.
No, I don't either. But I wonder if some team is willing to bet on him. Like, it might not be Winnipeg.
I kind of don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is the cap is going up next year. We know this. But I think teams are going to overpay. But I don't think they're going to overpay players like Monahan. I think you're going to get next year, the position you want to play next year going into free agency is you would like to be a right-sided, right-handed defenseman. If you are a right-shot defenseman, I think you are getting double what you should be getting on the open market, because teams are going to splurge on that position, because what is it that every team seems to need? They all seem to need a right-shot defenseman. So I think a Monahan can be picked up cheap, regardless of if he's getting these points. And I think the other interesting part of that too is that players that are scoring at a similar sort have scored at a similar sort of pace, especially coming from teams that aren't great. And I mean, the example I'll use is Timo Meyer. Yeah. So, like, the Sharks traded Timo Meyer on an absolute heater. Look at that scoring pace. That the talent is there. We all know the talent. So I've seen that consistently. He goes to New Jersey. It's not working. It's just not. It wasn't sustainable. And the Sharks knew to get out from under that when they had to before it dropped off. And you've seen it with other players where it drops off on someone else's dime. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that teams are smart. I don't believe that front offices are smart, and I don't believe that front offices will not see the rising cap and use it all on one player. I don't think it's a Sean Monahan, and I think Monahan gets maybe $3 million at the most.
I think that's the smart move. I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if some team makes the mistake of giving him like 5.5 or something, and don't look at the other end of the column and see that he's currently shooting 27% in Winnipeg.
The only team that I think would actually do that is the one that he's currently on, and that's because the Winnipeg tax.
Yeah,
I think Winnipeg might pay the Winnipeg tax if he vaguely suggests that he might be happy to stay in town. They will double whatever the offer should be to keep him there.
Yeah,
so that's the only team that I think will do it. I don't think the others will do that because I think everyone's going to be really busy overpaying mediocre right shot defensemen.
That's probably true. I mean, look, but finally, like a nice tidy little bit of business for Montreal, getting literally 2 first-round picks out of Sean Monahan. They took one on to take his contract in the first place from Calgary, and then they get another one for moving him on. So, very fancy.
Look, they're low-key. Low-key, Montreal's done some very nice work in gathering the picks they need. What they're doing in that front office is clever. I still think that the build is a fair way off. And I worry that the Montreal press and the Montreal fans are not patient enough to realize that this is not a fast turnaround. I think they're accepting it this year. I feel like they're going to go into next year deciding that next year is going to be their year. And I think another year's worth of building is probably needed to be decent because you also don't want to be a team that feels like it's their year a year early in the first year the cap goes up because you put yourself in a corner. And the smart move for Montreal is to give it one more year, save that cap space up, get to the deadline, and if you are in a position, then use it. But if you're not in a position, use it as the broker to gain more pieces to accelerate that build into the next year. That's the smart move. Now, whether they can do that or not, or whether you're going to have, the media pressuring them to go out and throw $5 million, $6 million at every player. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Vancouver, who have been busy, also made a phone call up north, and they made another phone call to Calgary. So Vancouver acquired Elias Lindholm in exchange for Andrei Kuzmenko, a 2024 first, a conditional 2024 fourth. That's if Vancouver make the conference finals. And 2 prospects in Yoni Uramo and Hunter Brustowitz. Yeah. So a lot to unpack with this one as well. And Vancouver's not done by a long shot in what they're doing at the moment. This was interesting. Is it an overpay?
I don't know if there's a better option out there for them in terms of I think someone would have paid this. It's not cheap, but I think it's what realistically at this point looks like a late first round pick, and a bunch of nothing really is kind of what the rest of it is. So I don't know. I don't mind it in that regard. It's probably a rental for Lindholm, considering that they are still working on the Elias Pettersson contract, which is probably going to be sizable.
There's a lot of news today that suggests that it's very close, the Pettersson contract.
And they do have a bunch of money coming off the books next year, but also they have to retain a bunch of guys too. So I don't know. I'd be interested.
And they have a habit of putting all that money back on the cap immediately.
Yeah, that's it. So look, I don't hate it. I think it's probably the best option they had available as like a center in terms of their depth. And as much as at some point in time maybe their PDO bender is going to crash, they're they're in a comfortable position and they can make a run in the playoffs. And I don't know, I don't mind that for them, given how long it's been since they've had that kind of success.
I had absolutely no issue with this. I actually thought this was a successful trade for both.
Yeah.
I thought that it gave Vancouver enough to give them a shot in a year where the division is well and truly down, and there is a space there. Like, we've talked about, the Oilers have been on this unreal heater and they've been charging through everybody. They're still third in the Pacific, even after going on a massive tear, and that's with the Kings forgetting how to play hockey completely. They've got games in hand, and if they win their games in hand, they'll move up to just in behind the Canucks. But still, it's
funny for me that Vancouver moved out Kuzmenko, because I feel like Vancouver as a team are basically doing the Andrei Kuzmenko first year kind of thing at the moment. Who could have foreseen that he wouldn't continue to shoot 27.3% for the rest of his career? I know. Yeah, I
kind of felt like it was a move that the Canucks could do that one, and it was a big pay, but nothing exorbitant for where they are. And for the Flames are in a spot like, again, the Sharks, a couple of other teams as well, where as many first rounders as you can get is what you're after. The idea of the Zadorov trades and stuff like that, and we'll talk about Tanev in a minute, and we'll come to that. Basically, the Flames are in a position where they're trying to gather as many picks as possible. The irony being that they're currently on a 4-game winning streak too. So who knows? The Pacific, it's zany. The Pacific makes no sense at the moment, really doesn't. But I think it's a decent move for both sides. I think that it gives, Lindholm gets a bit of a chance to show himself in a playoff run, and if he can do well in that, then there will be a bank waiting for him at the end of that. I think Kuzmenko gets playing time and gets featured playing time because they need him. So I overall, I think that's worth it, and the chances are that fourth doesn't happen. So I think it's fine.
That's reasonable.
Pittsburgh acquired Emil Bemstrom from Columbus for Alex Nylander and a conditional 2026 sixth. The condition on this one is if Bemstrom scored 6 goals with the Penguins from now until the end of the season, the sixth is upgraded to a third.
And he has 1 goal currently. He got that in his first game with the Penguins. Look, I don't mind this. It's not a huge move or anything. It's basically a change of scenery for 2 guys that haven't really kind of made an impact in the NHL. I think Bemstrom probably has a better chance of sticking in the NHL, but they've both kind of had these tantalizing skill sets at certain times or whatever, where it looks like they might be putting it all together, and then they've just been inconsistent and haven't been able to stay up in the NHL. I don't know. He hasn't played more than I think a couple of games at this point for Pittsburgh, but I haven't disliked what I've seen from Bemstrom, but what it looks like is just kind of another defensive bottom 6 guy that it looks like they're kind of packing out the bottom of the roster with. Dubas kind of seems to have a archetype that he goes for these kind of guys, and he's kind of just been thrown in with a bunch of similarly talented people. So I don't know. I'm not expecting a heap, but they have, I think, this year and next year of Bemstrom to see whether he turns into an NHL player, and otherwise he probably flames out.
And we'll have a bit more of a chat about what the Penguins are doing at the moment when we get to our last segment, which is all about what people should do at the deadline. And I think the Penguins are an interesting case study right now. The one that broke today just before we started recording, and who knows what happens after this. I assume a bunch of trades can happen after this, and we miss them all. Oh, well. If that happens, I'll probably jump on and do a recap of it later on the week. But we got the Tanev trade, which was one of the ones we've been waiting for. So Chris Tanev goes to Dallas. Now, Tanev to Dallas, we then found out was also via the brokerage of the New Jersey Devils, who suddenly stepped in. So why did they step in? 75% of Tanev was retained. The full 50% that could be retained, plus the extra 25%. So a double retention happened. For that, the Flames get a 2024 second, Artem Gushenkov, and a conditional 2026 third-round pick. And the Devils got a 4th rounder out of it. Now, this is a fascinating trade. And the reason it is a fascinating trade is I think that this is an absolute fleecing of Calgary. I think it's a fleecing of their own making. And the reason I think it's a fleecing, what is coming out in the media, and this is like Kevin Weeks just tweeted out, read Tanev trade and Zadorov. Toronto was interested in both. And as I reported, they tried trading for both at the same time as well as individually. And it is very clear from everyone I've spoken to, the Flames would have needed to have been blown away to send any of those players to Toronto. The belief was Toronto were offering a first plus, and they took a second. And there were others, apparently also similar thing with Vancouver, who they believe Vancouver was sniffing around there as well. They were prepared to possibly throw a first in.
It's interesting because it's definitely the odd one out. You know, we just talked about Monahan going for a first. We talked about Lindholm going for a first. And now Tanev, who was, you know, one of the top D available on the market.
There's your right shot.
Pieces. Yeah, it's a weird one. I don't fully understand it from Calgary's perspective in terms of like, I never really fully got that, like, oh, I don't want to trade with like people in my market or whatever. Like,
oh no, well we know why they don't want to trade here. It's very simple. It's called Jim Treliving.
Yeah.
They don't want to trade with Toronto, which I find really, the thing I find really interesting about this is that Calgary doesn't want to trade with Toronto. They got rid of Treliving. Brad Treliving. That's a Jim. Brad Treliving. Yeah. They got rid of Brad Treliving. And then they're angry that he went to. You got rid of him. Like you got rid of him. You went. We're moving in a different direction. We're moving in a different direction, Brad. And then, well, we're not going to trade with Brad. Why not? You made it clear. It's just, and it's cutting off your nose to spite your face here. Because I can't grasp. Why.
It's very silly that they let these kind of emotions get in the way of like getting a better.
Do I think that Tanev would have been worth first plus? No, I do not believe he's worth first plus. But if someone is willing to give that to you, you take it before they realize what they've done.
Yeah, I don't care whose first it is. It's my first after you give it to.
Like, but this is the thing. Twice now, Toronto's turned up with a first round pick and other things and gone, hi, we'd like one of your players. And they've gone, sorry, don't know who you are. Anyway, and I guarantee you they probably would have been in on Markstrom at one point.
Yeah.
But they're not going to make that phone call now.
The kind of like personality clashes and the kind of friendships and stuff that seem to happen. Like, you know, you see these teams that only trade with each other pretty frequently. Like, you know, they're like, oh, it's them again. It's them again, kind of doing these kind of swaps. It's just, it really feels unoptimized for them getting the best value out of anything.
Yeah. If you are a general manager and you have a petty reason for not wanting to trade with another team, you are not doing your club a service.
No.
And you are failing your team. And I don't care if you've got the as we refer to them, those rabbit uncles who are telling you the right way to play the game and the right way to do this, the right way to do that. If the uncles were running your club, you'd be screwed. You deal with whoever you need to deal with. If you are not in a playoff position and you can get a first-round pick in this draft, you take the damn first.
There's this fear, I think, from a lot of GMs that's like, oh, if I, you know, let's say I'm Pittsburgh or whatever, and I trade this player to Philadelphia, and then they go on to win a cup or whatever, I'm going to look real bad in my market or whatever. Like, it just feels this real kind of real fear.
Like that thing is the one thing that made the difference. That's
the one thing that.
Like if Toronto had traded for Tanev and then they miraculously went on and won the cup, Tanev's not going to be the reason why they win that cup. There's a guy in 34 who's pretty good. There's a guy in 16 who's not too bad. Like, those are the guys. Like, Tanev will help, but he's not going to win them a cup. Like, and that's the thing. You're not these, and it's never big players, right? They're never arguing over big players. It's a bit part player, and I think a large reason to do with this is that the league has convinced itself that the league thrives on the bit part players. And I think a large reason for that, honestly, is TSN and Sportsnet who make a lot of money off trading bit part players at the deadline. They make a ton of money off advertising and off coverage by making the deadline. And like, how often do you ever see big players moved at the trade deadline?
Yeah, very rarely.
You know, we're gonna have coverage in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm probably going to do live stream for it. So I'm probably just as guilty as everyone else, but we're not making money. But you know, we're going to have TSN sitting there for 9.5 hours coming up on trade deadline day, trying to convince you that the biggest move in the history of mankind is Sean Walker being traded.
Yeah.
Sean Walker is the difference between a Stanley Cup and not. If Sean Walker was the difference between a Stanley Cup and not, Philadelphia would have a Stanley Cup. Like a recent one. They don't. Spoiler alert. So this is where we're sitting right now. We're sitting in this situation where everyone's convinced that these bit parts are a big, like, if someone offers you the first, take the damn first. I don't care who you are. Like, if the LA Kings rang San Jose tomorrow and asked for any player for a first, I would pack them off myself. Like, I would put them on the plane. I'd give them a car. I don't care. I'd send them. Like, because we're in a spot where we need picks. You know, it's that simple. You can't afford to be picky when you need picks. So, but it does fulfill this brief that seems to be a lot of teams in the league seem to have at the moment, which is, you know, as I'm referring to it, ABT, anyone but Toronto. And teams are prepared to trade with anyone but Toronto. And I don't know why, because Toronto's like cap screwed, so you can really shaft them on a deal. Like, I don't understand it. So, but yeah, I'll be interested to see what Tanev does. Like, look, Tanev, it feels like a fit for the mentality of let's collect a bunch of old guys who are really good still. Like, it matches that ethos.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying to complete the set. So, other signings. So, Michael Rasmussen in Detroit, 4-year extension at 3.2.
That's fine.
Decent. Jesse Puljujarvi, woo! Still in the league. 2 years at 800 in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'm happy for him, honestly. Just that you know, he's back in the league. He you know, he did well in his PTO. He got a deal. He hasn't made a huge impact or anything. You know, on the Penguins, he's been kind of playing in their bottom six and stuff. But I wasn't really expecting the Heat. I'm happy for him that it's a 2-year deal. It's not just the remainder of this year or anything like that. You know, it would be nice for him to turn his career around, even if it is just as a bottom six guy.
I always felt that Kyle Dubas really always wanted Jesse Puljujarvi.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of glad that he's got him now.
Yeah.
Like, he's always wanted him. So it's like when you're playing like NHL and you get to the end of a player's career and so you like they're like a 79 now, as opposed to the 96 they were, but you've always wanted them on your team.
Yeah,
so you trade for them way over the odds because you just always wanted them.
There's a bunch of players on the Penguins that are like that now. It's really kind of in the last few years just become this fan service team of guys that like I wanted at some point. You know, basically it's like Jason Zucker, you know, Riley Smith, Ricard Raquel, Eric Carlson, you know, all of these guys or whatever that like, I'm like, it'd be great if we got these players on the team or whatever. And now they're all, and Jesse Puljujarvi is one of those, you know, guys was like, you know, now they're all finally here. Even honestly, Emil Benstrom was someone that like I had in a dynasty league and was like high on early on in his career, and he never really kind of turned into anything. It's funny. Like, at least if nothing else, even with them kind of being middling now, like you're kind of getting to play this weird like fantasy sports.
They're all now on a middling Penguins team.
Yeah.
So
they're all past their prime and they're all on this team.
I was going to say, do you want to trade for those in our fantasy league? Because this week would be nice.
Yeah.
Just saying, because we're playing each other this week, and I've been on the back of a bit of a heater, and I'm getting absolutely destroyed this week because not a lot of Leafs hockey happening, and Austin Matthews has been my points. Anyway, oh wow, what a bender he's on fantasy. Just last week he nearly won the entire thing for me by himself. Anyway,
yeah. What is it? 50 goals in 54 games or some shit like that? It's insane.
He's absolutely steaming towards that 60. So Tippett, 8 years at 6.2 in Philadelphia.
I don't mind that. They had to pay someone in Philadelphia. You know, he looks like he's got some talent there. I think with probably better people around him, it would probably look even better.
Yeah. And Zach Parise in Colorado gets the 1 year at 8.25. It's fine.
It's the try and win a cup for one last.
Look, he's got enough money. We all know that. He's been paid off forever. So we talked a little bit about it last podcast about the NHL umming and ahhing over the Olympic Stadium for the Winter Olympics, and we might not send out players because that Olympic Stadium looks a bit dodgy. They've announced they will participate in the 2026 and 2030 Winter Olympics, barring a Gary tantrum at some point. So it's good news. It's what it is. It's fantastic. Not much more to say about it. Everyone's
it's nice after a period of time of it being questionable for a bit that it's like, okay,
I feel bad for Germany. I feel bad for Germany and Switzerland and those countries that were doing really well with no Olympic players, no NHL players.
Yeah,
those
I
countries.
feel bad for some players that never really kind of got much chance to like Connor McDavid, hadn't really had much chance to actually represent Team Canada and all that kind of thing. So it's it's just been
Connor McDavid hasn't been given the opportunity to let Canada down in a big spot.
That's it.
And they all, it's the most batshit thing for me personally is watching the way that Canada reacts to Team Canada. It's mental. And the fact that the best team that they beat is probably the one they should have lost to in that US that home Olympics, the one they won with the Crosby goal. But Canada's not over Nagano. Like if you bring up the 98 Nagano Winter Olympics, it's a deep scar in Canada. They've never recovered from that team not winning gold. Because it was Gretzky, and they were going to win gold because Gretzky.
Yeah. It's fun to me that this 2026 Olympics is probably going to have Crosby on the roster as a veteran guy, as a 38-year-old veteran.
He's the mascot.
Yeah.
I like the idea that Crosby goes along as the mascot. That could be fun. Now, no way to segue, so we'll very briefly touch upon the other big news story. We're already briefly touching upon it. That Alex Formenton, Carter Hart, Michael McLeod, Dylan Dubé, and Cal Foote all currently away from their NHL teams while facing the sexual assault charges in relation to the 2018 World Juniors case, the one that has been bubbling away for about 18 months since that first came to light. There's no other information on it at this point in time except they've all opted for a jury trial. They had the choice. They've opted for jury. The suggestion is that they're trying to see. There's a conversation. A legal expert was asked if they had a better chance of outcome depending on if they were all tried as a single set of charges or individual charges. And so this is where the legal wrangling is at the moment, if it's a single set of charges for all of them or individual charges for each. So, but we're not going to comment any more on that apart from the fact that obviously it's currently before the courts. Also, Columbus Blue Jackets forward Patrick Laine checked himself into the NHLPA NHL Player Assistance Program and will miss an indefinite period of time.
There was a very unfortunate thing that happened with that, with a local Columbus podcast making some unsightly comments about Laine after that, and Laine calling them out online. It was nice to see everyone kind of getting around Laine and supporting and donating to mental health funds and so forth, on his behalf. So all the best to him. Hopefully he gets well soon. Yeah,
again, it's not even about coming back and playing. It's about just getting well and being healthy and feeling like he's in the right spot, and that's a tough thing. So. Fingers crossed that all works out, obviously, for Patrick Laine. Now, the Pittsburgh Penguins retired Jaromir Jagr's jersey number. He came and trained with the team, and everyone in the team was like, "Yeah, he could go on ice tomorrow."
Yeah, honestly, I was the only thing that would have made this better. Firstly, is if they hadn't blown the game that he was there for in the last 5 minutes, but also if they would have signed him to a PTO. Honestly, he could still play. Honestly, he could absolutely still play on this Penguins team. He could absolutely be in their bottom six. He might save their power play. Honestly.
You were talking about the fan service side of things. That's the ultimate.
Yeah, that's it. Why the fuck not? He's probably got commitments to Kladno that he
I was going to say, Kladno, would Kladno have let him? I was going to say, would Kladno have let him go? But like, he owns the team.
Yeah, he owns Kladno. I mean, like he could have done it if he wanted to.
Yeah, he demoted himself from Kladno to the Penguins.
But yeah, like I saw him training. You know, it was he seemed absolutely like he could still play in the league. You know,
100%. I have no doubt
or anything, but like, you know, he's still got it. You know, which is pretty impressive at his age. But you know, it was nice to see you know, everyone wearing the mullets, you know, wearing the Yaga jerseys in warm up and everything. It was nice to kind of have him back in the fold. He did a lot of like speeches. They had a lot of the you know, the veterans of the time that he, you know, played, the cups that he won there and so forth, came down as well, and you know, they gave little speeches and he talked about them and everything. It was a very fitting thing. It was nice to see, you know, especially after historically, you know, there'd been some bad blood there with him going, you know, leaving the team and going to other places and playing for, you know, rivals and all that kind of stuff. You know, there was a period of time, I think, where Yaga and Mario weren't talking to each other, but it seems like, you know, they've kind of made up, and it's really nice to see him actually kind of, you know, accepted back into the you know, into the organization, and his number retired and kind of recognized in the city as the, you know, the important player that he was. That, you know, they absolutely wouldn't have, you know, won those cups. He basically kept the team in Pittsburgh. Like, you know, they talked about it in some of the flashback stuff, in some of the videos and everything, that, you know, he scored a goal that got them another playoff series that was really the difference between whether or not they were likely to actually be moved out of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's like what he means to that franchise cannot be, as you obviously know better than anybody, it can't be overstated.
Yeah,
like what he means to that franchise.
And it's nice to see that he will always be, you know, a Pittsburgh Penguin in the rafters or whatever, regardless of however many other teams he played for after and all that kind of stuff. I think that, you know, he and everyone else kind of realizes that, you know, he is quintessentially part of that team.
Yeah, I think that's good for everyone involved, that they all sort of had that healing. Because I don't have a dog in that fight, but I'm thrilled that he was able to sort of find himself back in the fold, and that it was just something where it's now a feel good story. So, what's not a feel good story, although it could be in some circles, I think definitely in Columbus circles. Columbus fired Jarmo Kekalainen as general manager after 11 years. I can't believe it was 11 years.
I can't believe he made it 11 years. It's insane, considering how fast and turnover is in this league, that he made it that long. Is nuts.
I'm staggered that that's how long Jarmo's been in the job. I'm also staggered just by like the fact that he got fired almost seemingly out of nowhere. This isn't really out of character for what Columbus do. Like, suddenly it wasn't good enough. But this is just where they've always been. They just
what was the thing? I was just thinking, like, you know, how many between but like in the entire time that he's been there, I think that they've won like 2 series. I think that's
and one of them was the absolute from nowhere sweep.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, the sweep where they swept Tampa. Yeah, they made the playoffs 4 times and they won 2 series in that time.
Yeah,
in that 11 years that he was there.
Yeah, and again, one of them was just nobody can believe they did that.
He's had a lot of rope, really, considering.
That's my point. My point isn't so much I can't believe Jarmo Kekalainen got fired. My point is I can't believe he finally got fired. It's felt the whole way along like any day now, and then it felt like, well, there's nothing that Jarmo can do that will get him fired. And apparently the answer was nothing. They just seem to have, like, again, it was like someone woke up and suddenly went, "Oh, that's right.
What are we
fire
doing?
Him.
Oh, that's right. We could get someone else to do this job.
We could get someone else, a guy like him. We can find another guy like him." And what they've found instead is John Davidson. Because when in doubt, John Davidson is always there to pick up the pieces, and always keen to put himself into a general manager's job somewhere. So he's interim GM at the moment, but like, come on, like president of hockey ops, general manager, come on, we can all see that coming from a mile away, can't we? And the one that we missed out on last time because it happened just after we finished recording, noted mob boss Lane Lambert was released and relieved of his duties, and Lou Lamoriello, being the head of the mob, got on the phone and hired the one man who doesn't like listening to authority, Patrick Waugh.
It's a baffling one, honestly. It's incredible.
Staggered by the combination of those two people.
Yeah.
Like, this is, how many people do you know who have walked off the ice, walked over to the general manager and go, I've played my last game, trade me.
Yeah.
like, come on. Like, if he did that with Lou Lamoriello as a general manager, as a player, he wouldn't have left the rink. He wouldn't have had knees.
It's very confusing, honestly. I'm happy to see Patrick Waugh back in the league again. He's
bedfellows.
He's a character for it, but yeah, it's a very strange combination.
I'm amazed by the combination, and I don't know how he fits. I don't know how any of this fits. I'm still not convinced that Lou Lamoriello is there past this season, but we'll see. Before we get to the last segment, I just want to mention the PWHL because since we've last spoken, the PWHL broke their record attendance twice again. This time, though, the biggest one was the Toronto-Montreal that was played in Toronto. New record attendance for women's hockey, 19,285 in attendance. And they even managed to survive one of the analysts who slipped up when he meant to say Marie-Philippe Poulin was elite and said that Marie-Philippe Poulin was not elite. However, she was blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Everyone on the internet went,
what?
You're what?
Yeah.
You're what?
Like Hall of Famer Olympian, like
probably one of, if not the best women's player of all time, is not elite.
Yeah.
Cool. You do you. But we've talked about the PWHL like on the last podcast as well. I've regularly watching the games on YouTube. They're really good. There's some very good games going on. They're playing excellent hockey, and the crowds are reacting brilliantly.
I haven't had a chance to watch a heap of it, but I have noticed they've done like another game at the UPMC Lemieux Sports Center in Pittsburgh, and they'd previously done a lot with previous iterations of the women's leagues and stuff, trying to have games there and so forth. I really feel like they're gunning for a Pittsburgh expansion team there.
They are 100%.
Kessel and the Penguins organization, all that kind of stuff. Like there's something brewing there, and there has been for a while. So I'll be interested to see kind of how it develops for the league.
They've done super well in the way they've launched, and they've done super well in the way they've sustained. I'm very happy with what they've done actually. Now they've released today their playoff format and their draft formats.
Yes.
Now, I did tell Brendan to avoid as much.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to fully read it. I've seen some people talking about it, mostly Jeff Marek, who is excited by them doing gold drafting.
Yep. So the 2024 draft for the PWHL, it's the gold plan.
Mm.
So the first pick to the non-playoff team that accrues the most points following its elimination from playoff contention. Once you are mathematically eliminated, you begin earning draft order points. The most draft order points goes first in each round of the draft. So basically, on one hand, you could say, oh, well, that's not really fair to, the team that might be really, really, really bad who could do with that. But if they're mathematically eliminated and then everyone else is not out until the last round, they've got more of a chance to accrue points.
Yes.
Because you're only getting the points once you're mathematically out.
Yeah. If you're like bottom of the league by a huge margin, you're accumulating points for a significant time there. Obviously, it's not a perfect system in the same regard. I think that the idea there is that they're trying to keep some level of, some incentive, some level of effort in the bottom teams and stuff. Especially for the NHL, because that's usually kind of where it's been like pitched as like, Jeff Marek for years has been saying like, we should do this in the NHL. There are teams that are out of it like a month or two before the end of the season. I don't know if that's necessarily the case in the PWHL where it has 6 teams. that's probably not going to be a huge difference. But in a league where half of the teams don't make the playoffs and some of them are out, like it has. I don't think anyone in the NHL at this point in time has been mathematically eliminated, but it shouldn't be too far off for some teams.
I think it's also largely about, apart from just that we don't want teams to tank and deliberately be shit, I think it's also to prevent there from being teams that like roll over once they're out. Yeah. And like the playoffs can be impacted by teams that roll over at the tail end of the off season, and like, the difference between getting in or getting on or not getting in could be as much as, who plays the team that's already out and is just rolling over because they don't really care. Yeah. Like, so it also tries to maintain that. So I get it. I think it gives everyone something to play for till the end of the season. I don't mind it. Now, the playoffs. The top 4 teams in the regular season will qualify for the playoffs. The first place team then has 24 hours to select their semi-final opponent. The semi-finals and the championships are best of 5. Higher seeds have the home ice advantage for games 1, 2, and 5. And the games requiring overtime are decided by playing 5-on-5 until a winning goal is scored. Would have liked to see 3-on-3, but 5-on-5 is fine. But
I mean, look, 5-on-5 is probably what it should be.
But I like the fact that the top team gets the 24-hour window to select who they want. Call your shot.
I mean, it's not like they haven't already at that point known who they're going to pick. But I love that they're just doing all of those things that people have been pitching for the NHL for years to be like, oh, this would be really fun. Like, it's honestly, I think, genius for a new league to gain some excitement and stuff by just doing all of these crazy things. Because if for some reason it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. They'll change. They'll do a more traditional system or whatever. But just the extra excitement of having like an announcement or whatever, and then the animosity of having a team being like, oh, you picked us to, we're going to show you all this kind of thing. Like
the disrespect of being picked. And the disrespect of not being picked.
Yeah, and then if you lose to that
on everyone's shoulders.
If you lose that team that you picked or whatever, the chaos.
Yeah. Do you pick the team you think's an easy win? If you do that, is that disrespect? Do you pick the harder team? Do you pick the middling team? Why did you pick them? Yeah. You avoided them. You avoided them. There is so
many narratives. Did you want to play the team while you were healthier, or whatever? Yeah, it's interesting.
And then when you get through to the final, the narrative that's developed over you didn't pick us. Why didn't you pick us? We're going to show you why you should have picked us, or we're going to show you why you avoided us. I love it.
It's fantastic. And we know the NHL won't do it because they don't have the balls to actually,
With the NHL doing it too, what I like about the NHL possibly doing that idea is that you wouldn't just then do it with first. So you do it off the highest seeds on each side, and then the next highest seed left. So if one picks 2, then 3 gets to pick whoever they want, and it's the highest seeds. You go down to your left. Yeah. And I like that idea. Also, with the PWHL, they don't have to worry about East or Western Conference, obviously. So, and I look forward to the day where the NHL just goes, well, we'll pick the same number of teams from each, but then we don't care. That will be fun too. They will never do that. So, with that in mind, the trade deadline is afoot, everybody.
Yes.
So,
is it next week?
Yeah, the 8th. So, it's on the 8th. So I will probably, I'm working out the schedule at the moment. I will probably go live for part of it because why not? It's not like I do anything else. But the trade deadline. So there's a couple of players to sort of possibly put in here, but what we're going to do instead of we've got a list of players that will probably come up as we do this. But what we're going to do is what everyone on the internet likes to do, which is a good old-fashioned ranking tier list. Because why not? Because why wouldn't we do that? So with that in mind, I present everybody who's watching. If you're watching this, it's on there. If not, I'll link everybody in the description of the podcast to what we're doing. But it's a visual version of what we're doing anyway, so it'll make sense to you all. Yep. So we've got 4 categories. We've got buy, sell, stand, and broker. So obviously, buy means that we think that team is probably should be or will be a buyer. Sell means they're going to be a seller. Stand, don't do anything. Or a broker is the extra category I've added, which is they're probably not going to buy or sell, but they're probably going to be the make weight for a bunch of different trades to happen. So we're going to go through, and we'll go through each of the teams as we get there. So we'll start with Anaheim.
New Jersey, retaining some assets and bringing a broker in this regard.
Yeah, I didn't think the Jersey were going to be a broker, so that's interesting.
Well, they've got the cap space, I think, is stuff especially like they have cap space.
Shall we start with Jersey?
Yeah,
because I think they're a broker now.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, like they're not really in like an amazing position. Like there's this interesting kind of like mushy middle in the Metro at the moment, where like Philly, Jersey, Washington, and Pittsburgh. And the Islanders are all kind of around about the same points with some little offset between games played and stuff. And they're all really kind of fighting mostly for like a wild card spot, really. Like Philly's got a bit of a head start on the rest of them, but not so far ahead that they couldn't necessarily fall off.
Jersey are interesting too, because I think New Jersey see this year as a blip.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to get rid of anything.
No, and
they don't have the ability.
Injuries, they had a bunch of stuff. I think that if they weren't in that position, I would suggest that they stand pat. Like maybe sell anyone that they aren't intending to retain long term. But I think this is a bit of an aberration for them. I was expecting them to be significantly better.
Okay, I'm going to go with a really easy one. San Jose, definitely buyers. No. Sell the farm. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what they offer us. Doesn't matter who
anything
it is. I think so. For example, I think that the tricky part for San Jose after yesterday, and the massive loss to the Devils, which was a sandwich. We scored the first and the last goal. It was just the 8 in the middle. But the hard part is that the worst thing that happened yesterday was Mackenzie Blackwood got hurt, and it's now gone on to injured reserve. Yeah. Now, Kakanen's going to be in the net. They were ideally hoping to not have to play Kappa Kakkonen for much of this, because Kappa Kakkonen is probably getting moved and is probably going to be – there's a bunch of goalies we're going to talk about. I think Kappa Kakkonen's the affordable choice that could end up being a high-value piece for teams. But realistically, I don't think there's much to talk about with San Jose. I think – there's a bunch of players, even a couple that don't want to move. Mario Ferraro doesn't want to move. They're like, we want to give you a chance to go after something. He's like, I love San Jose. I don't want to leave. And they're like, no, you're like, we're going to be bad.
Yeah,
we are bad, and we're going to keep. And he's like, I don't want to go. So, but I think, I think they're going to sell a lot, and I think there might even be some surprise trades in there too.
Well, I mean, speaking of the goalie market, we've already heard that today that Minnesota are happy to hang on to Marc-Andre Fleury, which is a questionable decision for me. But like, I don't know necessarily how much value they were going to get out of it. I think at this point, Fleury just doesn't really want to go somewhere else again.
I think Fleury's just settled.
Yeah, I think he just doesn't want to bounce around anymore. He's already won some cups. He's not. I don't think he's like necessarily, excited to move his whole family for a few months for a playoff run.
So with their cap situation, do we think that Minnesota therefore are probably a stand?
Yeah, I think
they could be a seller still.
Yeah, I think that they could be a quiet seller. They have some players, I think, that they might be able to get something from, but I don't think that they're a big seller by any means. I don't think there's any kind of huge, pending UFAs or anything that they're going to be moving on from. Maybe there's a couple of, smart little kind of decisions that they can make, but I think that for the most part, they're probably going to stand.
I'm going to just make an adjustment to the list. Oh, that's gone the wrong way. So I'm going to change that to opportunistic seller.
Okay.
So I'm putting a second category of seller, which is opportunistic seller. And my thing behind that is that they're not necessarily going to sell, but if the right offer comes along, they're definitely going to take it.
Yeah, and I think they're probably going to move like one or two guys that, for a third or some shit. Like, I can't imagine that they're going to sell a lot.
Okay, I'm going to put forward Anaheim. Now, Anaheim's interesting because they've got a lot of young guys, so you wouldn't have them necessarily down as selling. You're more likely to have them, I think, down as standing or possibly even a broker because of cap.
Yeah.
But I think there's a question around Trevor Zegras. Not that they are shopping him around to anybody. But if you are a team that thinks you're right on the cusp and need one more real talented piece, I think there's an argument you can make to Anaheim to get rid of Zegras. I don't think they're happy with the way the contract negotiations went. I don't know how committed they are. If a team came along and made them an offer, I think you could get him out of there.
I think it's possible. I think that someone could come in and blow them away. I don't know how many people are lining up over Zegras just because of the kind of unknown quality there of, if you're real high on him and you think that he's got the potential to do more than he's done so far in the league, he's one of those players where it's like, oh yeah, he's a superstar or whatever. And then you look at like his actual like results and kind of go, well, actually he hasn't really kind of hit that level yet in terms of like the on ice, that realization of talent. So I don't know. I'm skeptical of who would be able to offer them enough that they would be willing to cut bait on him. But I do think that there's a handful of guys that they would sell. Like absolutely, Adam Henrique is going to go somewhere. Jakob Silverberg potentially might go somewhere. Maybe, if they can't keep someone like Labushkin or something, maybe, I don't know. But
I think we put them in cellar definitely.
Yeah. I think they're a seller. I think that there'll be players that they sell, but I think for the most part, probably they're just going to run it back with most of the
I'm going to float a weird one out there for the Zegras thing, and it sounds utterly stupid on the surface. Buffalo.
Oh, yeah.
Buffalo are not obviously in a current playoff spot at the moment, but I would think they've got the cap space to do it. They've shown they're willing to invest in young players. I think if a team was going to ring up and go opportunistically, we could get some for Zegras. I think Buffalo might be the team that goes, hey, we'd like him. I think I would, if I'm Buffalo, I would make that call. And I would gamble on the idea that a second half of the season with Zegras moves our pick further up.
I mean, who are they moving that's high enough value though? I mean, like it would have to be prospect based.
I think you could get Anaheim with picks. I genuinely think you could get Anaheim with picks.
Okay.
Genuinely. In terms of Buffalo,
yeah,
what I actually think they're going to do is stand.
Yeah.
I don't think Buffalo move anywhere. I think Buffalo look at their 20-odd million in cap space and go, we don't need to use that yet. We can have that sitting there waiting for us when we get to the off-season and the cap goes up and it's more. So, and I think Buffalo this year are quite happy to just go, last year we took a step forward. This year is not necessarily a step back. It's more we've just paused. Sort of we're sorting out where we're going to go next. This next off-season is our push. So if I'm Buffalo, I think stand is the safe option there. I can't see them buying massively and I can't see them selling.
Yeah.
So have you got one you want to put forward?
If we look at this, if we look at the start of the board, like I feel like Arizona easily falls into the sell category in terms of they've got a few pending UFAs. They've got Jason Zucker who only signed for a year, which feels like a contract that was always going to be something that was moved at the deadline. They've got Matt Dumba expiring and Stetcher and a bunch of other,
Isn't it weird? This is the first year in a very long time that Matt Dumba's name hasn't been mentioned as a trade candidate.
Yeah.
And it's a year he's probably going to be moved.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. But yeah, I mean,
every year in Minnesota, we're going to move Dumba. They're going to move Matt Dumba. Then he leaves, goes to Arizona, and this year he probably is getting moved. No one's mentioned it.
No one says anything. Yeah, I mean, look, I think obviously, if we look at across that of like obvious sellers, I feel like Chicago obviously falls into that category as well. That was always going to be the case. They've got a heap of expiring contracts that they'll move out for pennies. I don't know. Does anyone else stand out to you as an obvious seller? Maybe Columbus?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know what Columbus have to sell. I don't think they've. Again, to quote Jeremy Clarkson.
Yeah,
it's a bit like a smorgasbord at a Scottish restaurant.
Yeah,
nothing you can really identify and nothing that's of any particular value.
Well, and I think the problem is too that some of the guys are of higher value to Columbus than they are to everyone else. You know, we heard kind of with the stuff with Kekalinen or whatever, the rumors around it being potentially related to, you know, them wanting to move Boone Jenner, who's this kind of heart and soul of their organization. Whether or not any of that is true, I don't know. But I do think that they have kind of guys like Jenner and Roslovic and all this kind of stuff that are kind of like gritty Columbus hockey that they, you know, they could probably move for something, but they might not because they're higher value to them than they are to other teams.
The other thing is too, like, I'm just looking at the roster. It's the who would you move? So you've got Werenski, Sevenson have both got no moves. Johnny Gaudreau's
I don't think there's a lot there realistically. No, like maybe some little moves around the
Elvis Merzlikins.
I think that they have a crowded blue line, to be honest. Like I think that there's some guys that they could move out to make space for you know, people to come up and play in that blue line. But apart from that, there's not a heap of value there.
Yeah, I think they end up staying pat, not because they don't want to sell, but they can't.
Yeah, I think it's either stand or maybe opportunistic seller, but probably stand.
I think they end up standing because they just can't do anything with that. Yeah. Look, they're already 3/4 of the way through the process, so let's just put Calgary up in the sell category because I don't think they're done yet. I think I think if they've still got like 4 more players that are currently on their team, I'll be staggered. Yeah. Markstrom's out the door. They're looking to sell everybody who's not nailed down.
Well, let's see if we can, you know, identify some obvious buyers.
Well, this is the thing. We need to get to the buying phase. So I'm going to put a team in the buying phase automatically, but with the caveat of I don't quite know how.
Yeah, I don't know how Toronto does it either.
So I'm going to say it straight up. Brad Treliving is going to overpay for somebody at this trade deadline. And not mildly overpay. He's going to massively overpay someone at this trade deadline. Because everybody knows how desperate Toronto is. Everybody knows that they are cap-strapped. Everybody knows that they need to get out from a bunch of money to bring players in. Somebody is going to fleece the Maple Leafs. And the big problem is they were realistically, the one player they wanted has now been moved.
Yeah.
The only other real option they've got, I don't think is vaguely good in terms of what they're after, which is Sean Walker. And Philly are going to fleece them. If Toronto rings Philly for Walker, like if Toronto rings you tomorrow for a trade and you know it's for a right shot defenseman, you know how desperate they are. You are fleecing him all over the place. So they're going to buy. I just don't know how stupid they're going to be when they do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you can pretty much put the top 3 in the Atlantic in that buy category in terms of Florida and Boston as well. You know, they're all going for it. There's no reason realistically why they wouldn't at least add something. Like each of them could easily, you know, add someone into their you know, top 6 or top 4 D or whatever that would help them in a run.
Okay, another one. Where are we putting the Oilers? I think they want to buy, but again, how?
Yeah, there's going to be some cap, you know, crunching to happen. But yeah, absolutely, they're going to buy something. It's probably not going to be anything significant. But
I don't know what they're going to buy. Okay, I'm going to say Nashville.
Yeah,
it's either sell or opportunistic seller. I think that UC Saros is out the door.
Yeah, I've been wondering about that for a while. Like it feels like if you want to get any value for him before it's too late, you've probably got to do it soon.
If I'm the Oilers, I'm trying to do a deal with Nashville.
Yeah,
I'm trying. I'm going to put them in sell because I also think that Barry Trotz is smart enough to answer the phone. In his position, he's smart enough to answer the phone and go, "What would you like?" Vancouver.
Well, we've already seen Vancouver buying. I think that they're kind of all in at this point in time with the lead that they've got in the Pacific. Like they're going to continue to buy.
They're going to continue to buy.
I think so.
I think they will continue to buy. It's. I think Vancouver fans are happy that they're in a position to do this, but nervous about what this means.
Well, look, if I know Team Rutherford, there'll probably be one more like somewhat significant ad, like maybe like a defenseman or something, and then there'll probably be like 2 or 3 very minor things that happen right on the deadline that like are just for depth. that tends to be the way that Jim Rutherford does a trade deadline on a contending team.
Yeah. Okay. Where's the tricky one? Okay, interesting one. The Winnipeg Jets.
Well, I mean, obviously we've already seen them buying. Whether or not they have hit much more to add, like I think I would still put them in the buy category.
I think they'll buy again. I don't.
There's a handful of teams that are just because of their position in the standings.
It's because general managers are stupid.
Yeah,
and
you can
feel like
put the top like 2 in each division in the buyers because you know that they're going to, which means you may as well put Rangers and Carolina in there. You may as well put Vegas in there.
I think Carolina's definitely buying because it's Carolina and that's what they do.
Yeah, and I think that's what the Rangers do as well. The Rangers, every year they want to add some.
Vegas don't have the cap space, but they'll do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the one for me though that's really interesting out of all those sorts of things is Colorado.
Yeah,
I reckon they're going to stand.
I suspect that's probably the case. Like,
I think that Joe Sakic is now the sort of guy who's just like, I don't need to panic. Everyone else around me is going to panic. I just need to sit here. And because I think when we say buy, I mean, I think a lot of people automatically mistake the word buy for improving. There are going to be buyers that are going to make their team significantly worse because they're going to buy the wrong piece. Yeah. And I think that Sakic's philosophy is, I have a base core that will work it out. And I have enough trust in them to do it. So I think they stand. I don't think they do anything.
I think that's probably true. That's I can't see them being a big buyer at least. Like I'm gonna put the Habs. Well, here's the thing. I would have thought the Habs would have been perfect brokers, but they've got no cap space. Yeah, I mean, look, you could probably put some of these selling teams in broker as well. Like, I think, obviously, like teams like Chicago with a shit.
I'm going to say the Habs are an opportunistic seller because I don't think there's people bashing down the door.
No.
So I think Ottawa's a seller.
Yeah.
And I think Ottawa's a seller, and I think Ottawa's a seller largely. I think they're going to move Jakob Chychrun.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, look, we've already seen in the trades that we've talked about today, Dallas buying as well. I think.
Yeah, I don't think Dallas is done. I think there's old guys out there. If Dallas can work out how to send the money back, if Dallas can work out how to send the money back to San Jose effectively, Logan Couture would be a Dallas star.
Yeah, would you say put Dallas in the buyers club? Is that what?
Yeah, I see what you did there. You're on fire today. Are the Capitals still an NHL team?
Arguably. I mean, look,
nothing.
Yeah, I mean, they're a retirement home like half of the Metro at the moment, but
I think the Caps are just a stand because I just don't think they do anything.
I just don't know who they have that, like, realistically there's a market for. Like,
and I'm going to put Tampa in the stand because they can't do anything. And I know someone's going to go, yeah, they can. Watch the No, I don't think there's anything they can realistically do. I'm leaving one team to last because I think there's one team we need to have a conversation about at the very end of this. So, Seattle, broker?
Probably.
I can't see them improving themselves massively. I also can't see them shedding anybody, but I think they've probably got the ability to be a broker. They've got, like, not a massive amount of cap space.
Yeah,
but they've got
really that much.
I think, like, in terms of the broker, so the teams left that could be a broker. Actually, I'm missing out the most obvious broker there. I'm going to put Detroit in broker.
Yeah. I actually think Seattle could be a seller. I think Seattle has a couple of pieces that they could move in terms of, like, Eberle, Wenberg, Schultz, and so forth, pending UFAs. I think that there's some pieces there that they might want to move on from and take back. Yeah, I don't know. I would put them in sell.
I put them in seller. I forgot to put the Blues in seller. They're 100% sellers. They're gutting the franchise.
Yeah. I would put the Islanders in seller, but I don't know who they're selling.
They're opportunistic sellers.
Yeah, I think that's probably also true. Like, no one's lining up to trade for like Matt Martin or Cal Clutterbuck or anything like that.
No. Okay, the Penguins.
So, yeah.
So the Penguins, I would say from an outsider's perspective, they're opportunistic sellers.
I think that that's true. I think that that's probably the best category for them right now. Like,
Jake Gensel, anybody? Jake Gensel.
Yeah, they've been kind of teetering around that point for the last like month or so, where it's like, are they going to go on a little run and actually get themselves into an actual playoff position, or are they going to sell? But like, I think that one thing has become clear is that they're just not consistent enough to actually contend. Like, even if they make the playoffs, I wouldn't pick this team to make any kind of real run. As much as like Sidney Crosby has been like single-handedly dragging this club kicking and screaming into wins, the majority of the like on ice product just hasn't been good enough for them consistently to be a winner. But like, they've had that same kind of problem that you talked about with Karkkonen, where Gensel has gotten injured coming into the trade deadline. He's not out that long. He will be back like a week or two after the trade deadline. I think that there's a real big decision to make there around Gensel, not just for the sake of Jake Gensel, but almost kind of like at the core of like who this team is going forward. Because I think that if you move Jake Gensel and you could have had the opportunity to keep him, I think that signals where this team is trending. I think that signals that this team is rebuilding or whatever. Like, we've already seen Dubas come out essentially and kind of give a pretty wish-washy answer about like, we're trying to, essentially make some kind of, smart moves and stuff, and essentially continue to compete, but also start to
get younger is the vibe.
Get younger, try to kind of transition into the next, phase after Crosby and all that kind of stuff, which is the most non-committal, like middle ground kind of, thing. But I think that puts them firmly in that opportunistic seller thing. I think if they can't retain Jake Gensel for a reasonable contract, and they will absolutely move him. I would hope that they would look at moving on some of their other, pieces that haven't really worked out in terms of the guys that they've added, and like Ryan Graves and all that kind of stuff. But like, those are harder to move. There's probably more off-season kind of moves. But I think that this team is definitely not a buyer. They're definitely not a tear it all down and sell everything, as long as they have that core group of Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlson there. Like, until you start moving those guys, they're not going to become like a real seller. So I think opportunistic seller is probably right for them.
Yeah. LA, I'm going to say stand.
Yeah.
I don't think LA do anything. One, because they can't afford to. They're not a broker. They've built what they think is their core for going forward. I don't think they do anything. They just stay where they are and see if they make the playoffs or not. And I left the Philadelphia Flyers until the end, because who the hell knows what the Flyers are actually going to do? By this point of the season, it was expected that they would have been well and truly dropped off by now. They are third in the Metro, and they have a gap. So
a little gap. Like, basically, if they're a few points ahead of like the Devils, but there's not a lot of competition there. I think that really just kind of talks about how poor the quality of the Metro has been. After
the Metro is horrible.
Yeah, it's been terrible. But they certainly have the inside track on getting that third spot in the Metro. And I think that they're willing to just kind of ride that out and see what happens, and probably not make a lot of like big moves. I think that they're probably either a stand pat or maybe an opportunistic seller. I think that they realize that they're not going far.
It's really hard, because I think opportunistic seller, because again, I mentioned like Sean Walker, for example, is now the right-hand defenseman who's around, the right shot defenseman who's around. Yeah. And there's a club that desperately wants one. But in previous seasons, this is where the regime would lose their head and trade for everybody to try to win the cup.
Yeah.
I think the correct move is probably opportunistic seller, and to realize that they're in a fortunate position at this point in time, and they could probably get some resources to make themselves even better over the off season. But we often talk about and we've talked about this previously with like whenever we were talking about, Vancouver when they were in that really horrible phase they were in. And every year we'd bring up Vancouver and we get slated for it. But what we'd say was, the problem is Vancouver will be close enough at the deadline to be dangerous and talk themselves into being brilliant.
Yeah.
When in reality, you take it as we're in an advantage here. If we can get resources while we're in this position, we do it. We don't have to trade anything. But if we get an offer that's really good, we take the damn offer and put ourselves in a good building position for the future. I think they're opportunistic sellers.
Yeah,
but they could literally fit in every single category.
Yeah, I think it's hard to tell what to expect with them because we've seen them make big swings on guys that they've decided that they need, like Rasmus Ristolainen or whatever like that. I could absolutely see them doing something dumb and buying some long-term contract or whatever at the deadline as well. But yeah, I think that they're right in that kind of weird mushy middle.
Yeah, I think they're in the mushy middle too. I think they're sort of sitting right in between everything. So I think, look, what I think that confirms is that it's going to be a fascinating run-in because a lot of those teams that are in the buying category for us don't have the cap space to do it.
No. There's going to have to be a lot of salary moved around.
And the interesting part, I think, is that we've only got 2 teams sitting in the broker phase. So
I think that there's a lot of sellers that could.
Oh yeah, I think like San Jose are going to be used as the broker. I think Arizona are definitely a broker.
Yeah.
You've got
Chicago. I think Chicago is going to have to take on cap just to be able to move guys out.
Yeah, I think that. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a lot of teams are going to pay a lot of money to get certain players off the books to bring in other players.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see a lot of that happening.
Yeah, a lot of contract graveyard stuff.
Oh, 100%. So that's going to do us for this episode. Now, we will be back probably before the deadline. But if not before the deadline, I will let you know what's happening with the deadline. I may do some coverage.
Yeah, we'll try and do something in the next week.
Yes, we'll try to get something done in the next week. But thank you, everybody who watches, listens, all of those things. We really appreciate it as always. And we'll catch you all later.
See ya.